This is the tale of Arthur Finch and the terrible, creeping dissonance that became his reality. The first sign was the flicker. Not a physical flicker, like a light bulb dying, but a temporal one. Arthur was walking down his familiar street, the cobbled stones worn smooth by generations of footsteps. He'd just left Mrs. Higgins' bakery, a warm, yeasty loaf tucked under his arm. Then, a blink. Not a normal blink, but a skip, like a record needle jumping a groove. He found himself standing a few feet further away, the bakery door now behind him, a strange, metallic taste in his mouth. He stopped, confused. Had he zoned out? He looked back at the bakery. Mrs. Higgins was there, inside, but her movements were jerky, like a poorly animated film. The steam from her oven seemed to stutter, then vanish, then reappear. Odd, he muttered, trying to dismiss it. He continued walking. A dog barked, a sharp, staccato sound that echoed oddly, then died away. A child's laugh, usually a bright, continuous melody, became a series of clipped, disjointed notes. He looked at his watch. The second hand moved, but not in a smooth sweep. It jumped, hesitated, jumped again. A rising sense of unease settled in his stomach. He tried to touch the rough brick of a nearby wall. His hand passed through it, a sensation like cold air. He recoiled, staring at his hand, then at the wall. He tried again. The same result. He was slipping. Panic began to claw at him. He ran. His footsteps echoed strangely, the sound lagging behind him. He looked at the faces of people passing. They were like frozen images, their expressions caught in mid-sentence, mid-gesture. Some were blurred, as if they were moving too fast, even though they appeared still. He tried to speak, to call out, but his voice was a thin, distorted whisper, lost in the chaotic symphony of fractured time. He saw a car, a bright red saloon, approaching. It seemed to shimmer, its form flickering in and out of focus. As it passed, he tried to touch it. His hand went through the door, through the seat, through the driver. He felt a chilling emptiness, a sense of being utterly disconnected. He stumbled into his own garden. The familiar rose bushes looking alien, their blooms frozen in a perpetual, unnatural stillness. He tried to open the door to his house. The handle turned, but the door wouldn't budge. He pushed harder, feeling a desperate surge of fear. The door remained locked, but he could see through it, as if it were made of thin air. Inside, his wife, Eleanor, sat at the kitchen table, a teacup suspended halfway to her lips. Her eyes were wide, fixed on something he couldn't see. She was frozen, a still life in a world where time had fractured. He tried to call her name, but only a faint, garbled sound escaped his lips. He was a ghost, a phantom trapped in the cracks of time. He watched as the world around him became increasingly disjointed. Buildings flickered, people moved in erratic, broken sequences, the sky shimmered with impossible colors, the sun a fractured, winking eye. He saw moments repeating, looping like broken records, then vanishing altogether. He saw flashes of the past, a horse-drawn carriage clattering down the street, then the future, a strange, hovering vehicle passing overhead. He tried to interact, to make contact, but he was intangible, a whisper in a silent storm. He watched as days, weeks, perhaps even months, past in fractured, disjointed segments. He saw seasons change, the trees outside his window blooming, then shedding their leaves, then blooming again, all in the space of a few disorienting moments. He felt a profound sense of isolation, a loneliness so deep it was like a physical ache. He was trapped, utterly and completely, in a world that no longer acknowledged his existence. He was a spectator, a ghost haunting the ruins of time. The world around him began to warp and distort. He saw impossible geometries, buildings twisting and turning in ways that defied logic. He saw moments overlapping, the past bleeding into the present, the future flickering like a half-remembered dream. He saw himself, glimpses of his past self, walking down the street, sitting in his garden, frozen in time, like a series of ghostly echoes. He began to lose his grip on reality. His memories became fragmented, his thoughts disjointed. He couldn't tell what was real, what was a memory, what was a hallucination. He was adrift in a sea of fractured time, his mind slowly unraveling. He saw Eleanor again, a fleeting glimpse, her face contorted in a silent scream, her eyes filled with terror. He reached for her, but his hand passed through her, leaving him with a chilling sense of emptiness. He saw her vanish, then reappear, then vanish again, like a flickering image on a broken screen. He sank to his knees, his body trembling, his mind a whirlwind of fragmented thoughts and distorted images. He was lost, utterly and completely, in the chaotic labyrinth of fractured time. He was a ghost, a phantom, a whisper in the wind, forever trapped in the silent, empty spaces between the moments. The world around him faded, the fractured images dissolving into a swirling vortex of colors and shapes. He felt a sense of weightlessness, a drifting sensation. As if he were being pulled into the void, he closed his eyes, surrendering to the chaos, to the silent, empty darkness. And then there was nothing. Just the silence, the endless, echoing silence of a man lost in time.